I'm Chris Dush, State Senate District 25, and I've determined I'm going to start doing a podcast here about once a week and trying to get information out to folks. One of the things I've learned here recently and have been able to see myself is the media, the way the mainstream media is declining. The things that are rising are the folks that are doing podcasts, such as what this is intended to do. It allows people to see folks who are passionate about the things that they're doing. I get the benefit in this position to have a lot of people who are passionate about the work that they're doing and are working to be very effective in those respective fields. I have two friends who have been actively helping my team and I get to the truth of what is going on in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Joe and Sue Sweeney, they've started the Asservo Project here several years ago, and they've been actively involved with law enforcement as well as those who are working to bring education efforts. In fact, their team is doing that, educating young people and through forums such as this. And they're also working closely with those who are providing services to survivors of human trafficking. I am truly blessed to know both of them and have worked with them. And Joe and Sue, welcome to the podcast. And I'd like you to please, you'll do a better job of describing your organization and how, well, let's start with how you two got involved with this, and then a little bit about your organization.
Well, thank you, Senator. And it's a pleasure. We thank you for having us on. As you know, advocacy and awareness and education is key as well. We actually got started in 2017. As you know, my background, 30 years plus of law enforcement and federal government service and counterterrorism. And in 2016, I got asked by a former colleague to go and help rescue 3 American children who were illegally taken to South America. I was overseas at the time working, and I said, hey, I'll get back to you. And I knew he was doing this work. And literally, Senator, for the next 8 months, I did a dive and investigation on this problem. And I started by simply Googling kidnapped American children after we had this conversation to go rescue these kids. And what we uncovered in 2016 was 27 million people a year sold into slavery, $90 billion. As we sit here today, it's north of 50 million people, 200 billion, and those are conservative because it's the most underreported crime. So when we recognized this problem, and I was still going back and forth overseas, talking to my friends and colleagues in other police departments, and we realized there was a gap. Law enforcement was overwhelmed. Other NGOs were overwhelmed. There wasn't enough assets and resources to put towards identifying the criminals, the predators, the child pedophilia, and also the victims who were being groomed, especially kids online. So we formed the Asservo Project to sort of gap stop these needs that we found in conversations with our colleagues. So we started, a cyber division where we're actively looking for child predators online every single day. We have an education piece. So over the last 8 years, once we formed, we decided we had to do something. And Sue, sort of the brains of the bunch. I mean, as I was talking about this with her, and she brought up some points. She's like, Joe, at the time I was gone 6-7 months a year overseas. And she's like, what are you going to do? I mean, how is this going to work? So we talked it through. And I think those conversations really helped us to have a plan that we just didn't shotgun stuff. We identified needs, the capabilities we could put together. And sir, that's basically how it started. It was Sue and I, and we just went to work in 2017. And we brought some people on, we got some volunteers, we started raising money. And here we are now, we got a staff of volunteers and some, part-time folks of 11. We got another 20 volunteers. We've worked cases all across the country, and we have 2 international programs. We have a program in Uganda where we rescued 7 kids now. We have them in school and they're staying with our family there that works with us, who are also in the same business as I am in my government job. So that's been a great partner there. And of course, we have 30 girls in Nepal. We train their security teams. We've trained their rescue teams. And since we've been over there last year, 23, I think they've rescued another 15 girls, the two rescue teams we've trained. So we really just started to grow this out. We identified education as a problem. Sue brought that up, and we have Brenda Lutz, as you know, doing that. And of course, we have our human services, our victim services, survivor services, right? Where we can provide transportation, temporary safe housing for a few days. We've provided assistance with maybe some basic needs for survivors that might have had to move because of threats on their life. We have a lot of suite of things there that we can do that's in our mission statement. We provide transportation for survivors to getting from point A to B. We can also introduce them to other wraparound resources if they don't have them in their areas with some of our partners. So we've really become an organization, not only of hunting predators, rescuing children and adults, but we really now have also education and support services for these other NGOs who have case management duties of survivors, but they have no way to transport them, no way to get them help. No, so we just gap stop it all, and it's really been working out fantastic.
The one thing that we really don't do is the long-term healing of the survivors, because that's not our expertise. You need doctors, you need counselors for that. So we go as far as getting them into those facilities by partnering with those organizations, and we will get them there, get them settled into that. But that's not something we do. Neither of us are very good at.
Yeah, well, and there's plenty of recovery organizations,
Yeah,
you know, that's why we partnered with them.
That's what we found out when we first started this, that there were a lot of recovery organizations, but not many people going after the actual predators. So, and not a lot with education too. After we had started this about a year, we realized that education was key. If we didn't get to the kids, then it was just going to keep on growing.
Right. That helps in the fight against the demand side of things. And, you know, it's, I want to say disheartening, but just similar to what you described early on, Joe, you don't know what you don't know. And people, so many people, well, that's not a thing here in Pennsylvania. And Jordan Pine with Project Greenlight, something that stuck with me from the first time I met her when she was describing being over in Thessalonica, which is the basically traffic central for Europe. And they asked her when the people from America were going around and introducing themselves. She said she was from Pennsylvania, and somebody piped up and said, do you know where Carlisle is? And she's only a few miles from there. And that in Europe, they recognize Carlisle as basically the Eastern hub for the sex trafficking, the international sex trafficking industry. And that's right here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. But it's not just that. And Sue, I'm so grateful that you started with the education stuff and bringing Brenda on, because what we saw, Joe, when you guys did that presentation down in Cambria County, these kids, when you're describing how they get lured into this, the eyes going wide, and these young girls and young boys looking at one another like, oh, you know, I've been asked to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we see that all the time, sir. We you know, you can see the faces on the especially the high school kids, right?
Yeah.
We've done, it's almost 6,000 kids, I think, in 2024 we spoke to. Large part thanks to your office as well, getting us in schools. And the stats not only say 70 to 80% of the children in junior and senior high schools have already shared an explicit video picture. A lot of them are wrapped up in the strangers got a hold of it. Now they're being sextorted, they're being extorted. You know, the problem just exemplifies, because now they want more content, they want money, and the kids feel trapped. They've actually put the kids in a position where they feel ashamed, they think they're in trouble. So they're trapped, and they just keep engaging in this behavior. And the predators are making hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, on the videos, the pictures. And unfortunately, we have a case right now we're working The girl was going to meet this guy. And she was in, I think junior high. So it's a problem. And that's why these kids have to understand it, because we know they've done it. And we've actually had cases of the kids coming up, speaking to us afterwards of what they're doing. A couple months ago, I think I shared this with your office. We spoke at a school district, and after the presentation was done, one of the students went in the office and said, I think I'm being groomed. Here, police got involved. She was being groomed. They got a stop to it. They identified it, got it stopped. A few hours later, a boy walked in and said, I'm being sextorted by this young girl. Well, police got involved. Investigation started within a day and a half. The police identified the predator as a 76 or 77-year-old man,
Yeah.
and he's arrested and he's sitting in jail. I would think he's still in jail. So that was only a month or so ago. So, and that's right here. That's right here in the Commonwealth, as you know. And there's hundreds of stories like that.
We hear all the time people saying, oh, well, it happens over there, like in Cambodia or places like that, or Africa, but it doesn't happen here, really, does it? Nobody believes it. People just don't want to talk about it. They don't think it's happening. And then if you tell them, they're not my kid wouldn't do anything like that. And, unfortunately, it's true that, it's been normalized. These kids, when you talk to them and you hear that you say, why are you sending these pictures to each other? They just say, oh, it's no big deal. Everybody does it. And that's a shame, but that's the truth.
The predators have worked as a network to help to normalize that
Right.
behavior.
Yes.
When they're grooming them, can you give one or two examples of how that process works?
Sure. I can give you a case. A lot of it happens on the gaming apps as well.
Yes.
So the kids are obviously on them all, right? So typically it can look a couple different ways. They start gaming, there's a group of them that like the same game. Let's call it NASCAR, they're racing cars or whatever. So they start to build this fake friendship, really. Over time, few weeks. Hey, what's your hobbies at school? Oh, I like playing soccer. I play basketball. What else do you like? How many brothers and sisters do you have? I got 2 sisters. They drive me crazy. Yeah, I got 2 little sisters, So they go over time and they just ask these innocent questions, but it's really, they're building a dossier of private information that they can leverage against this individual. So after a couple months, then maybe they ask for a picture. No big deal, because they're already doing it in high school. So they send a picture. And why do they do that? People are like, well, that's crazy. Why would they send a stranger a picture? It's because this is the way kids communicate these days. They don't go in the street and play stickball anymore, right? They're online. They're meeting people all across the country, if not the world. So to them, it's a normal relationship. They trust this individual and they're like, what's the big deal? They can't see my face. Then those people might send a picture back, right? Probably not of them. Sometimes, yeah, a predator will. We've had that happen. So now they got that going. So then when they start to ask for more or money, sometimes the kid might get a little defensive, like, I don't want to do this anymore. That's when they start to extort and sextort. If you don't send me more pictures and videos, the ones I have, I'm going to share with your parents. I'm going to share with your school, your church, your other friends. Now, how do they know this? Because for the last several weeks, they've been asking them these questions of what their hobbies, what they like to do, where their parents work. So they have all this information they can use against them to share these pictures and videos. That's one way.
And another way, when they're playing on those games, sometimes they'll get to a level where they can't get any further. They haven't got enough points or something. So their new best friend will say, well, if you just send me a pic, I'll give you the points to get up to the next level. So these young kids don't think anything of it, and they'll do that to get up to the next level on the game. There's all kinds of things they use, tactics they use.
And so you brought up a good point. The predators facilitate this normalization. They've done their homework. They know these kids in school have been sharing these pictures for years. It really escalated over COVID. We had data that the pornography sites during COVID were up 14,000% during COVID. So we know the demand side of this was really now getting online, and people were starting to use it because they couldn't get out and about. So that's a couple of different ways there. But we've seen them as fast as 2.5 weeks, kids being groomed to actually leave their homes and go with these predators for a better life. And I'm not talking about kids on the fringe, the at-risk youth. I'm talking about wealthy children, private school children. I mean, money is not an issue. So the
No.
demographic gap for the predators has shrunk. They target everybody online because their goal is find a vulnerability, create a vulnerability, then exploit it. And that's why this thing has grown to a $200 billion criminal enterprise. A lot of it being the videos and pictures online. And then unfortunately, a certain percentage of these kids will meet up with these individuals. Typically then they're assaulted sexually, it's filmed, and then they use that to traffic them and leverage them to do what they want to do. You do this for me for a couple of weeks and we're even. Well, it never ends. And
No.
next thing you know, they're in a place they can't get out of. And this goes for young adults too. It looks different, maybe. Maybe it's you're meeting people out in clubs and bars.
Yeah.
We've had young adults groomed out of universities at 19 and 20 years old. Never had an issue. I mean, come from really good structured families and environments. They make a mistake or something's missing in their lives. And the next thing you know, that's the position they find themselves in.
Yeah, I've even heard one survivor, she was 22 years old whenever she got lured into the business, and it was extorted right away. She had had a very strong Christian upbringing, and she just made a couple mistakes, and the next thing you know, they know her family, they know, her friends back home and all that, and she doesn't want that stuff revealed to them.
Yeah,
It's
we've had the same cases from university students. One of the things we've realized, now I don't know, it's still fairly on, we're looking at, a lot of the freshmen, when they come to these universities, they get an app to meet all the other freshmen, right?
Yep.
This girl was groomed in a week. This guy said he was going to commit suicide. He had a sex addiction problem. That was his line.
Oh my word.
Now, this girl was a Christian, homeschooled a lot, did some high school. She was already almost graduated college when she went to college because she was that intelligent. Groomed in a couple weeks. It was 10 days. Her vulnerability was empathy. He knew that she cared about his life and he leveraged it. So she sent a pic or two. And then he goes, maybe if I can just get through this, I won't be thinking of suicide. I mean, I don't know the script 100%. I got pieces of it, and that was her vulnerability. So the message to the parents is anybody can be a target, anybody, and anybody can be a predator, because we have seen an increase, at least we've identified an increase in intergenerational abuse, kids being abused within their own family circles. So, I mean, we could lay it out there, and you probably got a dozen different ways of how they recruit, groom, traffic, and exploit.
The one thing about this crime is they don't care whether you're black, white, Asian, what religion you are, whether you're rich or poor. It doesn't matter. If they can make money out of you, they will find a vulnerability and they will use it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When you've got a child being trafficked or a young person being trafficked 7, 8, 12 times a day, the traffickers, that's one of the reasons the cartels have gotten involved with this, is because they don't have the supply side of that thing. They don't have to traffic them from the drugs from New Mexico or from Mexico up into Pennsylvania. They're catching these kids and getting these kids involved locally. Some of them are still living inside their homes and being trafficked while they're at home.
Correct.
And people don't understand that. They think that the idea of trafficking is that they are moving these kids around, and that is not the case. I mean, it's, as you say, they can be trafficked out of their own homes, and the kid comes home, Mum, Dad, I'm going over to my friend's house to do some homework. and off they go, and they get in the car with the trafficker, who takes them to a hotel, puts them in a room. Men come in one after the other, then they take them home and they go back to bed, and the parents have no idea that they're being trafficked. We've seen that happen. So I think a lot of people have an incorrect idea of what human trafficking is. They feel that it is the moving them around, and it isn't. It's just
Right.
putting them, as I say, in a hotel room and then advertising them online.
With some of those kids, what are some of the warning signs for parents that, that your kid might be still living at home, but being trafficked? I've heard like from Jen Spry and others about, the gifts, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, some of the indicators are tough. You're going to have to really know your child, right? Because sometimes there could be some social awkwardness. That's why they're online a lot in the first place. They're addicted to it too. But I would say if they start to seem isolated, they start to withdraw from their current friend group. They're showing a lack of interest in maybe extracurricular activities at school, maybe church. If they're church going, they don't want to go to church. They sort of start to isolate and withdraw from that. Anxiety is another one. If you happen to see maybe some of your friends' kids that you might think that there's an issue, malnutrition is one. Also, all of a sudden, kids that are junior high, maybe, and even senior highs, like where do they have the means to have these expensive bags, jewelry,
Yes.
clothing, makeup, right? They'll spend money on that stuff, but that's about it. They're not going to give anything else to these people. So those are a few indicators as well. They'll tend to avoid eye contact. That's another one where they'll talk to you, but they really don't want to look. They tend to look away. Also, if they have a job, like where's their money going? If they have a part-time job, like you seem to not have any money, yet you're doing this job. Well, they might not have a job, right? They might tell their parents they're helping somebody or making a little money on the side, and they never get any money, but yet they have all these accessories. So I would say behavior is kind of a big thing, a change in behavior and all those types of things. Physical abuse, they come home with bruising,
Mm-hmm.
big indicator. Also, if you see them engaging with older men or women, that's another indicator. It's kind of unusual for 16-year-olds to be hanging around 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds.
Right.
It's actually more unusual for the 30-year-olds to be hanging around
Yeah.
15-year-olds.
Well, but there's always a story, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I need part-time help. It's really a movie script. They write the script to fit whatever victim they're going after because of the information they've already received innocuously, right? Over gaming or chat rooms and even dating apps for the adults. A lot of it happens on the dating apps. They meet up. For the adults, they typically will date for a little while. We've seen cases where after a few months they're basically raped and filmed. Then they
Mm-hmm.
use that against them, or they're threatened or coerced that they're going to go after their parents. If they have children or brothers and sisters, they're going to harm them if you don't do this. And then that's some of the indicators.
Young single mums, that's
big indicator there.
huge.
Yeah.
They'll go after the young single mums because the vulnerability is that they've got a child.
Right.
Yes. With the gaming apps and stuff like that, what are the ones that are more prevalent right now?
Yeah, we're actually working on a few of that, right? Some of that stuff here. They're all bad. Where there's kids and minors, that's where the predators are because that's where they hunt. But I would say, Roblox has thousands of games. And within those games, there's these subcultures. They call them condo games. And so they start to set up in there and they start to share explicit content. I think the average age now for a child, a girl, I think is 11 years old to see pornography the first time.
Yeah, hardcore porn.
So in these games, they release some of this content where these kids are seeing it. Well, then, hey, they're 13, 14, 15 years old, right? Whoa. So then they get involved in here watching it, and then maybe a chat starts, and that's another way they get them. But if your child has a phone or a computer or a notebook, they are at risk of seeing this content purposely being shared to them. And of course, by design, grooming them to traffic them either with videos, pictures, or in person.
Yeah, one story that I'd heard, I'm glad you brought up Roblox. A guy was sitting, he and his son have consoles right next to one another, and he was playing. He thought he was spending time and investing time with his son. But mom walks in with a sandwich, set of sandwiches for him, and sees some stuff where the kid's actually having a chat that dad doesn't realize is actually going on at that time. And this kid was getting groomed. And they had been sharing some the photographs and stuff. So that's you think you're doing the right thing, sitting there, and you're providing these games to your kids, and you might even think you're there with them, and they can't do it while I'm sitting here. Well, yeah, they can.
I really think there needs, and it sounds radical, right? When somebody that doesn't know a lot about this epidemic, and I'll make this statement, like, you should really consider your children having a phone before 16 years old,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. And people, they lose their brains over it. Wow, I want my son and daughter safe. You know all the school shootings that are going on? Yeah, I get it. Number one, do the math. How many schools and how many shootings? Those school shootings are horrific. And of course, they need addressed.
Yes.
But the fact that you're going to let your child have a phone and take it to bed with them, which is the worst thing you can do, before you sit down and talk to them about it, think about it. Do you hand your 16-year-old the car keys and say, okay, you passed your test, good job, see you later? You still have years to learn how to drive, right? From 16 till maybe you're even 2021 till you really get good at it. We're all rolling the dice with our kids when we give them a license at 16. I know my dad did with us. But yet, when you give them a phone, it's, hey, here you go. Merry Christmas, happy birthday. And you don't give them any guidance. You don't put any blocks or filters, explain to them what's going on, how dangerous this is. We need to get that message out there.
And all parents, I think, should, especially with the younger children, those phones should be switched off at 9 o'clock at night and not put on again until 9 o'clock in the morning or whenever they go to school. Because that's when the predators are out there hunting. They're hunting for those kids.
Yeah, we know the activity is higher at night until about 2 in the morning, I think.
So if the kid's taking it to bed with them and the parents aren't watching, that's when the predators are looking for them.
You'll enjoy this story, sir. We had a presentation like the ones we've given in your districts. And one was a friend of mine. I saw him a few weeks later. I said, hey, how's it going? He goes, my life's miserable since I saw you a few weeks ago. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, the presentation impacted us so much. We went home. I think his daughter was 16. We stopped letting her take her phone to bed. And he said, she has been a terror. She has been angry, confrontational, borderline not even speaking to us for weeks because she says you're treating her as a child. And she doesn't understand what the dangers can be. But they held to their guns. They said, sorry, we're not even going to chance it, because even when kids are educated, they still make mistakes. They're still going to go out there. So it works, and she was angry probably because she was probably doing it at night, with her friends. We see it all the time. They're all friends in school doing it. So it's,
the phones, of course, have really, phones and tablets and computer has just made this go crazy. I mean, 27 million people when we started 8 years ago, now 50 million people. It's all because of the online stuff. And I'm sure you know that in New York today, they were saying they're not going to allow kids to take their phones. They're putting it through that kids aren't going to be allowed to take their phones to school. And I think that's about the fourth state that started it.
yeah.
And it has to happen. These kids are just so addicted to their phones.
Yeah, they get addicted to the games, and then the same endorphins that they're seeking out there. Once those images flash, all of a sudden that's an even stronger dopamine hit or whatever,
Right.
and they get sucked into that, and it's just like going from long-term marijuana use into cocaine and heroin and stuff like that.
Well, that's what they're saying, that pornography is the gateway drug to human trafficking. That the kids start looking at pornography, and then it has to get worse and worse and worse, and till they get that excitement, and eventually they end up looking at child pornography or human trafficking or something like that. It's the same endorphins as a drug would do. So, yeah, it's very sad.
So, so you'd mentioned earlier about how it's not just in the home. I mean, the kids aren't just getting taken away. But when that does happen, what are some of the things that, Joe, the work that you've done in the past that got you started with this? What's a parent to do if all of a sudden the kid up and disappears? What?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we've had a case like that where the parents woke up to a note.
Yes.
Kid was groomed. He was, 13, 14 years old, I think. The actual traffickers came and picked him up. Call police if you think your child's involved and they've left, they got in an argument, runaways. You need to call the police first of all. Call us second. I mean, we can start doing some things to not be in the police's way, but we can start feeding them some real-time information. We have facial recognition software to find people. We have some investigation tools, link analysis tools. We have a basic capability to track some of these folks. But you have to act quickly. Otherwise, every day that it goes is more of a challenge to find them in a reasonable amount of time. And truly, once they're gone, and they get hooked into this lifestyle, it's really difficult to get them back. So it's very imperative that they recognize signs. And I would say, don't be afraid to call somebody. If you're not sure, call us. Call us. We're not the cops. I mean, we can talk to you. I mean, we can talk to you what we've seen work. Because if you let it go, and like Sue mentioned, we see it all the time. They kick the can down the road. Well, how can my son or daughter be involved here? They've never been in trouble. They don't drink, they don't smoke, at least that they know of. They're pretty straight-laced kids, but something in the behavior is not right, or they've started to change. Try to have a conversation with them first. Now, we had 3 teenage daughters at one time. I mean, it was, I get it. That's why I don't have any hair. I don't know how she's kept her hair, but you got to have those conversations because the outcomes are tragic.
Yes.
And teen suicide is up because of this. It's not the main factor, but it is a contributing factor. These kids are taking their own lives because they feel trapped. There's no way out, and they're embarrassed to talk to their families. They're ashamed. As a parent, as soon as you suggest that there's something wrong, some abnormalities going on, pick up the phone and call us, call somebody in the industry that can give you some advice.
And so the sad thing is that the children know more than the parents do when it comes to tech. There's a huge gap between like the parents of teenagers now. Like our kids are in their early 30s. So when they have teenage kids, they're going to know what their kids are doing because they grew up with the tech. It's the parents who are in their 40s and 50s now who have teenage kids. The kids they just know way more than the parents do when it comes to all these apps and the phone and any of the tech.
Yeah, they know how to keep them covert. They hide them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So the parents, and that has been a huge problem with the education piece, is that we can talk to the kids, and we also have a lot of parents, don't we, that grandparents that turn up that are very concerned about it. But the 40 and 50-year-old parents think that there's nothing going on. They don't think that this is real in this country. They don't think, they think that only happens in other countries. And as I say, not my kid.
Or in the inner cities.
Yeah. Oh, yes, in rough areas. And
This is going on out here in rural Pennsylvania.
Yep. Everywhere.
Most of our cases are rural.
Yes. Yeah.
Believe it or not.
Because think about it, the inner city kids are a little more smart, a little more savvy when it comes to, they're street smart. They're not so easy to get one over on. When these predators go after them, that they can see that it's a scam, but it's the kids that are very vulnerable that they're going after. They're going after the easy pickings. So the kids out in the rural districts, especially the ones with like more money and they're just easier to pick on. They look for vulnerabilities. So
I hear one of the biggest vulnerabilities, one predator that was interviewed, he said one of the first things he looks for is not having a father figure in the home.
Mm-hmm.
If you got a strong father or a a strong grandfather who's actively involved with the child, you know, in a single parent situation,
Right.
that that's pretty much one of those things where he'll disappear from his trying to instead of investing time into try to groom somebody like that, he will. It's all about time, and
Right.
you know,
Move on. Find another
move
one.
on.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep.
somebody easier.
Yeah. It's
So,
sad.
uh,
But I really, really think that the thing that is going to change the needle, well, two things will change the needle with this. One is education, is
Yeah.
teaching the kids that there is a problem and what to look out for. And the other one is to going after the Johns, the people that buy. Because right now it's no big deal, is it really? It's then,
no,
you know, they get a slap on the hand, you know, so unless of course it's an underage child, but I think there has to be tougher circumstances for these people who buy.
we are actually, you know, some of the legislation we passed before here last year dealt with the helping the victims, but the survivors. But we, you know, when you have a child or even a young adult who's caught up into trafficking, they're compelled to go out and steal things. If they haven't produced enough,
Right.
their traffickers are saying, well, you got to make up for the money that I lost by not having sex with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So they're out and they're stealing stuff, they're that sort of thing. So they end up with a felony conviction, and then that follows them for life. But we're working on legislation that will actually, if you're caught up in that as a you know, you've been groomed and sucked into it, or you've been abducted and forced into this, because that trauma bond situation between the trafficker and the person being trafficked is so such a strong thing, and they know how to manipulate. These guys are professionals at what they do, and we've got to stop arresting these little girls for prostitution and start arresting the Johns and hitting the demand side and putting those guys away,
Right.
so that there are consequences. Because when the man, you know, they break up a man with a prostitute, these two people together, and they arrest the girl for prostitution and let the man go free.
That's not right.
That's, yeah.
It's not right.
Well, he typically gets a summary offense, which is like,
Right. A
yeah.
speeding ticket. Yeah.
Slap on the hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, Senator. You know, and we've cases we've had, the women we've helped, they've been arrested 8, 9, 10 times and never said a word until it got so bad. They finally said, look, I don't want to be doing this. I'm being forced to do this. That's typically when we might get a call for a safe 2 to 3 day stay. They need a place to put them because they're going to cooperate
Yes.
and try to get out of it. So 100% the legislation, I'm glad that your office is looking at that, because we've seen cases where they've actually opened bank accounts and charge cards in their victim's name. So, and now they break free. They're on the back to recovery and reintegrating, and they find out they owe taxes. They owed a tax bill of 20 grand because they had the business in their name, never paid taxes on it. Right now they funnel the money.
Right.
They got charge cards that are maxed out in their name. I had a girl call me. She was from Texas. She goes, "Can you help me? I'm trying to clear my credit. The IRS says I owed them like $18,000 and I never had a business. Here, the trafficker opened up a business in her name.
Yes.
Money." And she told the IRS, she showed the paperwork of her court case, and the IRS said, "Yeah, okay, you still owe me $18,000. And it was like, what you talk about despair again. Like you can't,
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. So there's a lot of work to be done on so many factors of this problem.
Yeah. That's one of the things that there's so many facets to this that nobody's going to come up with an overnight solution.
Right. Right. And I think also some of these victims, you take them away from the trafficker and they still think that trafficker has feelings for them. We've had
Oh,
cases
yeah.
It's
that
the trauma
the,
bond.
the
Yeah.
trauma bond is still there. They, well, I love him, he loves me, you know. They don't understand that, no, he doesn't care anything for you. It's just the money, and he'll move on to somebody else. And the boyfriending thing is such a huge deal, and that's what these young kids are getting caught up in online. You know, they think it's this young boy and he's going to be so wonderful, or the boys think it's a young girl. You know, like the kid in the school recently, you know, thought it was a young girl, and here it was an older man who was.
Yeah. Linda Smith with Shared Hope. She had a case in her book that she was describing where this young boy, there was a guy sitting in a local restaurant that was gathering all sorts of information from the pretty waitresses at the restaurants around the area. And then they got this young, attractive boy that came in, and all of a sudden he was hitting on all cylinders with these girls. And then he would arrange for them to go to a place out and see. It was in Washington State. They go to this place, and they go out to a party together, and all these people that have lots of money. Turns out it was a home that has been for sale that was they basically raided overnight, and then the girl went back home, and she was all set to take off to Arizona with him, and he had bought her a ticket to and said some friends will meet you there. I'll be on the plane 2 days later. No,
Yeah.
she disappeared if Linda hadn't gotten involved, and that there's so many different ways that they manipulate these young people, and it's not just girls either; it's boys.
Right, it's definitely a lot of boys. Yeah, yeah. It's very sad, and as you say, there's hundreds of different ways. And another thing I think we need to do to stop this is to talk about it more. It's a nasty subject, and a lot of people just don't want to talk about it, but we have to talk about it. We have to make people aware that this is going on right here in Pennsylvania and in the rest of the United States. The sad thing is that in the United States, we are the largest producer and consumer of child pornography in the world. How sad is that?
That is just heart-wrenching. And you know, a lot of these people that you got men and women who are watching this stuff, and when they go for progressively younger and younger and younger kids, they don't realize, or it's not registering in their minds that these kids are being trafficked.
Right.
They've got a horrendous life, and you're contributing to it, because
Right.
they wouldn't be in business, these pornographers, if these people were not paying for it.
Right. Right. Well, what was that sad about the during COVID when the FBI downloaded that thing on the deep
It
web?
wasn't the FBI, but
Oh, was it?
it was one of the agencies. Yeah, I mean, they were trying to get a gauge on, in the dark web, uploading child pornography videos, which is now called CSAM.
Yes.
And I think within the first 15 minutes, there was something crazy like 75,000 downloads that people paid to watch this child being raped. So that's how they're gauging the problem, because it's the most underreported crime there is. Second to the drug trade as we sit here, but in a few years, it might overtake the drug trade. So, definitely that's how these statistics are trying to get put into an incubator, so we can look at those and then develop tradecraft on how to change those, right? How to get these numbers down. That's what we do.
Well, we're getting pretty close to the time on this, but a couple things I'd like to wrap up with is can you let parents know what kind of resources you have, as well as school administrators, the things that you can provide, or if somebody's on a school board that was like, oh my word, I didn't realize how they get your team, and describe a little bit about your team and what they do with kids.
Sure. On the education side, I think we're speaking.
Yeah, let's start with that.
Yeah, on the education side, typically we get an introduction to an administrator at the schools and we show them the school presentation for the kids, and a lot of testimonial videos in there of other kids. So we let the administrators look at it. They can choose which videos they like, which ones they don't. 98% of the schools say, present it as is, man. We want it all. And once we get the approval there, letters are sent home to the parents that we're going to have an assembly that day. This is the topic. This is what we're speaking on. We have letters that go out. We're already printed. It's turnkey. We send them out to the schools.
Right.
And that way the parents can opt out if they like. And that's typically how we get into the schools. Some of the tools, we have a cell phone contract. We were getting requests from parents. They were saying, we don't know how to start this conversation with our kids because, number one, they're not talking to us anyway because they're teenagers, right?
Right.
So it's a contract that just sort of lays out some basic ground rules and some things they agree on. And at first, I wasn't really sure if it was a good tool. We've had phenomenal reviews. So it's on our website. People can download it and start that conversation, starting to give the kids a little more authority over their decision-making on these devices and the tech they're using. We have some other things for hospitals. We spoke to UPMC, educating their staff and clinicians. Quick signs on what to recognize, because in an ER, you can have a lot of trouble. Shootings are coming in, you can get some fights going on, upset people. It's a place for sick people or people that are severely injured. Sometimes the traffickers bring them in there. So we have those resources online as well. And of course, if a parent reaches out to us and they have specific needs, we can tailor it to them and what they need for their particular kid.
Well, that's great. Do you want to give your website and information on how to get a hold of you?
Sure. Our website is www.theasservoproject.org. There's a contact page on our website. You fill that out, and those all come directly to me and one other staff person, and we'll get back to you, whatever you need. We get a lot of requests for information because they suspect something. And after we speak to them, they're really glad they called. Not everything's trafficking. Sometimes it's moody kids. They're in trouble doing something else, But at least we can eliminate some of this horrific problem that maybe they suspected they might have been getting involved with. Just be proactive. Get a hold of us on the website. We have our own tip line. It's 877-SAVE-994. It's on the website, and it gives you the actual number too. That's our tip line. We answer that tip line within hours, and we started that because the national tip line was overwhelmed and it wasn't working very well at the time. So those are a couple ways to reach out to us. I'm pretty available, as you know.
Yes.
You reach out on the website, we're back in touch with you, and we'll develop a conversation, and we can even meet with the parents. We meet with them all the time. In the evenings after work, it doesn't matter. We're here for that reason. And we're not a 9-to-5 organization. It's good and bad. Good for the parents, not so good for us. But, we're here for that reason. That's why we do what we do.
Well, it's your heart that stands out in all of this. Like you said, you're not 9-to-5, and you're not 9-to-5 because your heart's in it, and you know that this happens. For instance, like we were talking earlier about the kids taking the phones to bed at night, and they're there on phone, and they're just waiting for mom and dad to go to sleep, and out the window they go. So this is I'm very grateful to have been able to work with both of you and your team. I'm grateful that you've helped the Senate with the Senate Policy Committee hearing that produce some good results. And we'll have a link to your webpage, as well as information on some contact information on the phones for your phone numbers. If you're a school administrator watching this, or anybody that's involved with schools, consider this your personal invitation to get to invite these folks out to actually teach your kids that the effects are actually immediate. And if we prevent one child from descending into that hell that is human trafficking, it's worth every bit of you having these folks up and on your campus so that we can prevent it. I'm a former crime prevention NCO with the military. The one thing you learn about prevention side of things is you don't see the results of your work a lot of time because you've kept something from happening. On the other side of the law enforcement spectrum, you're going in after. You can keep track of arrests and prosecutions easier than you can prevention.
You know, and I'll throw a stat in there as we close, sir. Every predator we can identify, true identity, and have
Yes.
arrested and convicted, that 75 to 100 kids will not be exploited by that individual.
Absolutely.
That's why the administrators need to get on this. I mean, we're out there. I mean, we got a lot of schools that's growing. We've had just as many schools tell us they're not interested in so many words. And they're until they hear the other schools are doing it. It's like a turf thing. Forget the turf thing. Get us into your schools. Because if you don't, we know the schools we've asked and they turned us down. And we know there's problems in the schools because we know some of the parents or we know some of the older kids. And you don't want that. I mean,
Yeah.
unfortunately, when these things happen at the schools, they even cover it up. Not that they let it continue. They just put down the exposure of it instead of sharing it, saying, "Look, this is a problem." The schools are even ashamed, and they got to get over it, in my opinion.
Yes.
So
Every time we talk to a counselor or a teacher, and
They know.
you say about the kids share, we say 80% of the kids are sharing graphic pictures of each other. They all, yep, we know. They all know. They know they're
Yeah.
doing it, but it's like this dirty little secret that we'll keep covered up, you know?
Yeah. When you're in a position of authority and responsibility in the public sphere, you have to exercise that responsibility. And so I want to thank you both again. It's a pleasure knowing both of you personally as well as professionally. We've been very careful about who we partnered with because I want to make sure that we're putting people out there who are very good at what they do, and because they're good because they're passionate and compassionate. So you guys have shown that over and over again, and I just can't tell you how grateful I am for the work that you do.
Hey, we're happy to partner with you as well, sir. I mean, you've really cleared some inroads, you know, because when we first were starting, we were learning ourselves. I mean, you know, I never did anti-trafficking before. I mean, I kind of knew about it, but as we got deeper in it, we realized we need to force multiply here. And when we got
Absolutely.
when we got an introduction to your office, it's been great. I mean, you've really helped us a lot. And more importantly, you've helped children and young adults. It was enabling us to help them. So that's the game, the end game.
And as you say, even if it's just one kid a year, that's
Yeah.
one kid that's not going to have this horrific lifestyle.
No, we're already past that this
Oh,
year.
yeah, we are. We're only halfway through January.
Yeah, it's been a busy year already. So
Yeah.
You know, I bring this up from time to time, but Joseph Stalin used to say, "A single death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic." And he loved how the West was always talking about the statistics. And when I look at these individual kids and the survivors that I've actually sat down and spent time with, and that's the big thing. It can't be about statistics. Every single one of these kids is going through a living hell right now on Earth. And that's something that I think those of us who have been blessed with positions of authority, responsibility, have a duty to ensure that we can put a stop to it to the best that we can. So thank you guys.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Again, to the folks who are watching this, I just want to say thank you for watching. If you find this to stir your heart, and that you know that there are things and schools or even parents out there that are that could use this information, please share it. And don't be afraid to call my office or Joe and Sue at the Asservo Project. We will get you the help that we can. So God bless, folks, and have a great day.